Minister, I asked my question in the context of the Irish Government Economic and Evaluation Service spending review, an assessment of the impact of Brexit and COVID-19 on Uachtaráis na Gaeltacht and its client companies. And specifically, my question is, what analysis has your department carried out in relation to the low uptake of the Brexit loan scheme compared to the uptake of the Future Growth Loan Scheme?
Deputy, the Brexit loan scheme and the Future Growth Loan Scheme have very different objectives and were both established prior to the onset of the pandemic. The Brexit loan scheme was launched in 2018 to provide SMEs and companies with fewer than 500 employees with an option to access competitively priced working capital to help them mitigate and react to the impact of Brexit. It was intended that the scheme would be available for 1 year prior to and 1 year after Brexit. But with the repeated deferrals of the Brexit deadline and the transition period, many businesses quite naturally delayed their Brexit preparations. The added disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic has meant that businesses have had to focus their efforts through much of 2020 on successfully navigating this unforeseen crisis. These factors have resulted in a modest uptake of the Brexit loan scheme to date, with about 57 million in loans approved to 281 businesses. In comparison, the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which was established to provide long-term lending to SMEs, also aimed to close an identified gap, i.e. the low and underinvestment among Irish SMEs. This has seen a rapid uptake from its launch in April 2019, such that the initial 300 million scheme was expanded by government to a further 500 million in available lending. There continues to be very high demand for the Future Growth Loan Scheme, and to date 523 million of the 800 million available has been sanctioned to 2,601 businesses. This is very encouraging news that even at this time, so many businesses are seeing opportunities for expansion and are taking steps to invest in their businesses to ensure their longer-term sustainability and growth. However, Brexit will mean change for Irish business, and it is imperative that an option providing access to working capital remains available. In this regard, I've extended the Brexit loan scheme, so it will remain in place throughout the entirety of 2021.
Catherine Connolly. You might just address yourself to the spending review, because it's extremely interesting in relation to the Gaeltacht areas, and that first of all, 85% of all the jobs there are in micro enterprises under 10. That's the first thing. Secondly, they're the most exposed sector in all of Ireland to Brexit. Why is that? Because most of their exports go to Britain. So just to give you a few and you're well aware of this, I know that. Gaeltacht companies are significantly more exposed to a disorderly Brexit than the Irish economy in general, due to their reliance on the UK as both an export and a source of raw materials. In 2018, 31% of Uachtaráis client companies went to the UK. 82% of Gaeltacht companies surveyed as part of the review had not applied for any Brexit supports. And I could go on, 13 seconds. The review actually identifies the problems, that the packages available are not targeted. That's one of the main findings, that we need targeted, focused supports for the small businesses in the Gaeltacht areas.
Thanks, Deputy. I think they are targeted, and there are a lot of different schemes, loan schemes and grant schemes. It may be the case that they're not targeted particularly to the Gaeltacht, but they are targeted to small businesses. So, for example, if you take micro-enterprises, which you mentioned, enterprises with fewer than 10 employees, in terms of the loan scheme that they can benefit from the Microfinance Ireland loans, and there's been really good uptake for that. And effectively, that's an interest-free loan for the first year, and then a low interest rate thereafter. And there's been very good uptake on that. Also, for small businesses in the Gaeltacht that are trading with Britain, I'd really encourage them also to avail of the €9,000 grant, which we're making available through Enterprise Ireland, to enable them to either take somebody on to do customs, or if they're very small and that's not what they need, to redeploy somebody in the business towards customs, so that they are ready for trading with Britain on the 1st of January.
Minister, tá sagam go bhfuil tú tomata don Gaeilge agus nó tá éagéanta agat is eisiam lár thu ó híomh na Gaeilge. Ach maidiúil leis an rud seo, tá sé tharbh soléir nach bhfuil an tacaíocht fáil don daoine an talamh. Mar shampla, má léonn tú an túrascáil. Despite the large suite of measures available to the companies through Enterprise Ireland to deal with COVID-19, the take-up by Uachtaráis client companies was very low. Feedback from these companies would suggest that this is in part due to the fact that many of the supports were in the form of repayable grants or low-cost loans. And if we look at the next page, the feedback from Údarás na Gaeltachta is that the small local enterprise office grants have worked well. The grants have worked well. Why? They are accessible with a simple application form and open to the wider business community. And what does this review say? This demonstrates there is an appetite for micro and small enterprises to engage with the development agency when the product offering addresses their core issues. So the review generally is a very interesting review if you read it. I pay tribute to the writers who have made it very readable and accessible, and they're highlighting that the Gaeltacht areas are suffering in particular for the reasons I've outlined, and they need first of all we need a recognition from the government, and then we need to target it. That's why I asked you what analysis had been carried out.
Imeachta imharmse tá an tachiíocht ar fáil don daoine agus fiontar ar an talamh, but I will take a look at that review. I got a brief summary of it. I haven't read it from cover to cover, and I'll do that over the Christmas break. What we have is a package, grants and loans. And of course there's more demand for grants than loans because grants aren't repayable, and that will always be the case. And businesses taking on debt need to make a decision as to whether they want to or not. And one of the reasons why the Future Growth Loan Scheme has been so successful is it's long-term money at a low interest rate for businesses that can afford to expand. So therefore, they're businesses that can also afford to repay loans. The other loans are really for working capital, short-term lending to get through, get over the hump, if you like, of Brexit or pandemic, and there's been less demand for them. I think what might be the case perhaps in Gaeltacht regions is people aren't getting the level of information that they should be getting as to what is available. And if you take the grant, for example, for customs, only about 300 companies have availed of that so far. So I'll definitely take a look at that review and see if there's something we can do that's focused at Gaeltacht businesses.